Welcome to Nasdaq Trade Talks. I'm Jill Malandrino, Global Markets Reporter at Nasdaq. Joining me is Ben Jones, Product Development Specialist with Nasdaq Index Research, to discuss the history of cloud computing, trends in the space, and performance. Ben, welcome back to Trade Talks. And this is interesting today as we incorporate some history into our index coverage. We know cloud is a key driver in tech, but where did it get its beginning?
Yeah, so the term cloud computing was actually coined in 1996. In an internal document at Compaq, right? We all remember kind of the Compaq computers back in the 90s. But it's really been a buzzword that has now become into prominence in this COVID-19 era where, everyone working remotely is using cloud computing in some facet, right? Whether it's, logging in remotely to, kind of a corporate database or using various different services that are available, right? But ultimately, if you think about cloud computing, it's really simple, right? It's about the delivery of on-demand computing services from applications to storage and processing power via the internet, right? Now, there's a lot of sophistication and complexity behind the scenes, but that's really it. And I think really you saw cloud computing kind of break to the forefront back in the late 90s when Salesforce became the first company to offer applications over the internet. But right now, if you look at the next slide, you can really see why cloud computing is so important in today's age, right? In the world of COVID-19 and beyond. The CEO of Microsoft said that we've seen 2 years worth of digital transformation in just 2 months. That was at the height of COVID-19, which is a sign that this was a trend line that we were following, but it just got pushed forward a little bit because of the COVID-19 pandemic. And now you're seeing, increase in spending on cloud computing. And as you see more employees working from home, they're going to be relying more and more on cloud computing services.
And Ben, let's review the composition of the index and get some of the names of the companies that make it up.
Yeah, so that's the good question. Like, how do you access and track this theme, right? Because it's nuances. I mean, there's a lot of different companies providing, various forms of cloud services and cloud computing solutions. And so we have a solution. It's the ISC Cloud Computing Index. And it's an index that is, thematic in nature in the sense that it tracks companies that are providing cloud computing services and solutions. And using classification from the Consumer Technology Association, we break down this theme into 3 areas: infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, software as a service. And the companies in the index, they're weighted based off of the type of services that they provide. So you see companies that, let's say, provide both infrastructure and platform services will have a higher weight, right? So it's different than a traditional equal weighted index or cap weighted index, and it really gives a pure play on this theme. And that's why you see exposure to the likes of Alibaba and Google and Oracle and Microsoft. It's also an index that doesn't have a lot of concentration, right? The top 15 names only account for about 49% of the index. And then if you look at the size of these companies, it runs the gamut of large, mid, and small. You see more of a weight towards that large and mid cap space in this index, and that's where you've seen kind of it's driven a lot of the returns and exposure in this cloud computing index.
Ben, finally, how is the cloud index performing relative to the major averages?
Yeah, so you can see it's performed well this year, right? I mean, I think the onslaught of COVID-19 really shifted and increased the demand for cloud computing services and ultimately cloud computing stocks. The basket as a whole is up about 37.8% this year. It's been competitive with some really growth-oriented indexes. But you can also just see how it's outperformed, let's say, the market, right, by beating the S&P 500 this year. And the sign of demand for a segment of the technology industry, but also a segment of the market that is going to be in demand and important going forward as we get through, hopefully, this COVID-19 pandemic.
All right, Ben, thanks so much for joining us on Trade Talks, and thanks for joining me. I'm Jill Malandrino, Global Markets Reporter at Nasdaq.